The first thing Darius heard was the siren. Not the soft whoop of an ambulance, but that sharp, split-second black that makes your heart stall. He blinked awake on his couch, shirt still halfway tucked from last night's bartending shift, TV frozen on some late-night crime rerun. Sunlight slanted through half-open blinds, striping the living room with gold bars. But outside, the sound of voices rose like a crowd had gathered on his block. Darius lived in Southeast D.C., 2 blocks off Minnesota Avenue. Nothing about that siren should have been new. But as he staggered to the window, rubbing the crust from his eyes, his gut tightened. The scene below looked wrong. A matte black SUV with gold crown decals idled crooked across the street. 2 black officers in jet black uniforms with gold piping were yanking a white man in khaki work pants out of a pickup, shoving him against the hood. Across the street, an elderly white lady stood frozen at a bus stop bench, painted bold black letters, "Black only seating." "What the?" he muttered. Darius grabbed his phone. No missed calls, no alerts about riots or anything. Just the same cracked screensaver of his late pops in a Redskins cap. He slid into his sneakers and stepped outside. The morning air smelled like wet asphalt and burnt coffee drifting from the Go-Go Mart on the corner. Neighbors were standing around, but something was off. Every black face wore that same calm authority he remembered seeing on cops in old black and white footage. Every white face carried the stiff, watch your mouth caution he'd seen all his life in brothers talking to the police. It was like somebody flipped the entire mood of the block overnight.
"Sir, please, I was just late for work,"
the white man stammered, voice cracking.
"I didn't know I couldn't park there."
"You people always got an excuse. The law is the law. You break it, you pay it." Hearing that phrase, "you people," sent a chill through Darius. It sounded too familiar, like an echo bounced off history's walls. A city bus screeched to the stop. Its side bore a faded stencil. Black passengers enter front, whites use rear. A black female driver in a crisp cap barked at a pair of white teens trying to board from the front door. They lowered their eyes and shuffled to the back steps without a word. Darius rubbed his face hard, convinced he hadn't woken up fully. Last night he crashed after double shifts. Maybe he was still halfway in a dream. He decided to walk toward the bridge, hoping the fresh October breeze would clear his head. The further he went, the stranger it got. Billboards showing black executives in power suits above slogans like "Black Wealth Builds America." Storefront windows with handwritten notes, "White applicants must present special work permits." A white mother clustered her son's hand tighter as 2 young black security guards strolled by, laughing about the Wizards game. His heartbeat drummed in his ears. Darius wasn't the type to scare easy, but he felt the ground of reality tilting under him.
"Baby, you okay? You look like you seen a ghost."
It was Miss Louise from the corner store, rocking her usual colorful head wrap. She was watering her stoop plants like nothing in the world was strange. "Yeah, just tired," Darius muttered, forcing a smile, but his eyes kept darting back to the patrol car, now towing the white man's pickup while the man sat cuffed on the curb, staring at the ground. By the time Darius reached the 11th Street Bridge, morning traffic was thick. Another matte black SUV blocked the lane, officers checking licenses of white commuters at random. Construction crews, all black men in gold-crowned safety vests, leaned on the fence, sipping coffee, watching like kings surveying subjects. Darius leaned against the railing overlooking the Anacostia River, trying to slow his thoughts. He pulled up his phone and scrolled the news. Headline after headline felt like satire. New black-led Senate expanded housing quotas for white districts. Study shows white communities face higher stop-and-frisk rates than ever. The articles read dead serious, no parody tags in sight. A gust of wind whipped his hoodie strings as memories of his father's stories about Jim Crow bubbled up. Separate fountains, back of the bus humiliation, curfews. Except now,
All the faces were swapped. A knot formed in his stomach. He wasn't sure if he was angry, scared, or guilty for feeling a spark of grim satisfaction.
Excuse me, sir. Do you know if they'll let us cross soon?
A white woman's voice trembled behind him. She clutched a grocery tote, two small kids hiding behind her legs. Darius turned. Her pale face was flushed from the cold breeze and from something deeper, that hunted look he'd seen on his own aunt years ago during a traffic stop. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. I think they're just doing checks, he finally answered, voice softer than usual. The woman nodded, whispering a shaky thank you, and pulled the kids closer as another cop strolled by without acknowledging her. That's when Darius noticed the posters on the lamppost beside them. Mandatory parade, Black Unity Day, all white residents must remain indoors until 5 p.m. His throat dried. He could no longer convince himself he was merely dreaming. Everything felt too textured. The smell of diesel from the SUVs, the distant chant of a radio preacher praising the new order, the scrape of a worker's boots on the bridge steel. As he turned back toward home, the siren blared again, louder, closer, and a voice on the bullhorn shouted something about curfew zones expanding east of the river. People nearby paused mid-conversation. The white woman gathered her kids and hurried off. Darius quickened his pace. Whatever world he had woken up in, he knew two things. One, the rules had flipped overnight. And two, surviving here meant keeping his eyes wide open and his mouth mostly shut, at least until he figured out if anybody else remembered yesterday's America. Back in his apartment, he locked the door, slid down to the floor, and stared at the muted TV. A breaking news ticker scrolled, Black Supremacy Party sworn in for third term. His reflection in the dark screen looked back at him, confused, wary, already carrying the weight of a new reality. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "What kind of dream am I stuck in?"
The banging on Darius's front door came before sunrise the next morning. 3 heavy knocks that rattled the thin frame. He jerked awake on the couch again, hoodie still on, the muted TV casting blue light across the room. Outside the window, he caught the flash of gold-crowned decals sliding off a patrol SUV's hood. "Open up, Black State Inspection." The voice boomed through the hallway. Deep, official, no warmth at all. Darius's stomach knotted. He hadn't done a thing wrong, at least not by yesterday's laws, but the way this new world ran, that didn't mean a thing. He cracked the door open to find 2 black officers framed in the hall's flickering bulb. One broad-shouldered sergeant with polished boots, the other younger with a clipboard glowing under the emergency light. "Routine curfew zone check," the older sergeant said flatly. "White tenants on this floor need their permits verified. You seen any unauthorized visitors last night?" Darius shook his head slowly. His voice almost came out defensive before he caught himself. "Nah, sir. Haven't seen nobody but my neighbor Miss Louise watering the plants." "If you do, hotline's on the flyer. Don't cover for 'em. Fines hit everybody on the lease." The sergeant slapped the black and gold notice against the doorframe and moved down the hall, boots echoing. Darius closed the door, heart still hammering. The flyer's bold type screamed, "Mandatory ID sweeps. All white residents curfewed after 7 p.m. He brewed stale coffee, phone buzzing with group chat texts from his boys, clowning about the Wizards game. None of them mentioned the upside-down headlines he saw yesterday. He typed a message, "Y'all noticed the city flipped or nah?" but deleted it before hitting send. Something told him not to sound crazy. By mid-morning, he decided to hit the corner store. Maybe outside chatter would confirm he wasn't losing it. Streets looked calmer than yesterday, yet the air felt charged, like everyone was waiting for orders they couldn't see. On the block near the Go-Go Mart, a new line had formed, mostly white workers clutching lunch pails and paper permits, shuffling toward a mobile checkpoint under a canvas tent.
Two armed black guards scanned QR codes on the permits, while another officer's shepherd dog sniffed bags. An electronic sign blinked red letters, curfew line, keep ID visible. A young white teen in a faded denim jacket shifted nervously when the dog barked at his duffel. One guard yanked it open, tossed out a folded hoodie, then waved him through without apology.
Excuse me, sir. Do you know if the checkpoints stand all day?
The woman with the grocery tote from yesterday stood 2 spots behind the teen, her 2 kids clinging to her sleeves. Darius turned, recognizing her tired eyes. He said, "Heard ain't leaving till the parade's over." She shoulders shook sadly, but thanked him anyway. He ducked into the Go-Go Mart where Miss Louise was ringing up a customer, a middle-aged white man counting exact change with shaky fingers. She greeted Darius like always, sliding him his coffee cup, but lowered her voice. "You watch yourself out there, baby. These streets, they different now. Folks carrying grudges like grocery bags." He nodded, appreciating her tone. The same woman who once shielded him from a neighborhood scuffle, now warning him about a whole city's mood swing. Outside, the line at the checkpoint kept stretching. The guards' radios crackled about extra buses rerouting to avoid restricted white corridors. Walking back, Darius saw fresh graffiti sprayed across a brick wall near the basketball court. "Payback season." A group of black teens posed for selfies under it, throwing mock-serious salutes. The sight churned his stomach. He understood anger at history's wounds, but seeing kids celebrate somebody else's fear felt wrong. He cut through the alley to avoid the crowd and almost collided with 2 plainclothes detectives stepping out of an unmarked car, both black and both wearing gold-stitched armbands that marked them as authority. "Watch where you walking, brother," one detective said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Alley's hot right now. Stay clear unless you want questions." Darius muttered an apology and kept moving, his pulse still high. The detective's tone reminded him of every stop and frisk he endured years ago, only now he was on the unbothered side of it. That realization sat heavy on his conscience. Back in his apartment by noon, the TV blared coverage of the parade. Streets downtown packed with black crowds waving gold-crowned flags, while white onlookers were pinned behind metal barriers, watched by mounted officers. Commentators praised the historic progress, barely noticing the curfew sirens rolling through suburban streets. He turned off the set and stared at the silence. He wasn't sure whether to be grateful or horrified that nobody else in his circle seemed rattled, as if the world had always been this way. His phone buzzed. A message from his cousin Marlon. "Yo, swing by the shop tonight. New pool table came in." Darius stared at it a long moment. 7 p.m. was when curfew kicked in for whites, and he wasn't sure what might go down after dark. Still, curiosity about how far this flipped order went tugged at him. He typed back, "Bet, be there after dinner." As dusk settled, the wail of distant sirens rose again, carried on a cold wind over the rooftops. The street lamps glowed amber against deepening blue, highlighting the checkpoint's shrinking but still tense line. From his window, Darius watched the white woman usher her kids into a small sedan, headlights cutting across puddles as they hurried to beat curfew. For a split second, her eyes met his up at the window, a flicker of shared understanding between strangers caught on opposite sides of a new wall. He whispered to himself, "I ain't no way this just happened overnight. Gotta be something bigger behind it." That thought followed him into the evening as the first curfew siren officially sounded, long, hollow, like the city exhaling a warning none dared ignore.
The city was quieter the next morning. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that hums under your skin like something's crouched around the corner waiting. Darius sat at his kitchen table, staring at the black and gold flyer he peeled from his door last night. The bold print about fines and hotline numbers blurred as his mind replayed the image of the white woman's eyes at the checkpoint, her kids clutching the sleeves. He needed answers. Not hashtags, not rumors. Real history about how this upside-down world came to be. He decided to hit the public library downtown. if it even felt like the same library he'd grown up in. Throwing on his hoodie and a ball cap, he stepped into the hallway where Miss Louise was taping a fresh notice to the bulletin board. Black Unity Parade, road closures extended through Friday. Morning, baby. If you're heading out, watch them detours. They stopping buses across the river again. Appreciate it, Miss Lou, he said, forcing a grin before heading for the street. Outside, the October sun broke through thin clouds, glinting off wet pavement, and the black SUV parked at the corner like a sentinel. The bus ride downtown felt like traveling through two different worlds. Black commuters up front, laughing over sports scores, earbuds in. White passengers squeezed in the rear, quiet, hands folded on bags, eyes lowered. The driver, a middle-aged black man in a crisp cap, barely glanced at the rear mirror. As the bus crossed Pennsylvania Avenue, Darius noticed fresh banners strung between lampposts. 25 years of black supremacy, stronger together. A shiver ran down his arms. The math didn't even add up. Yesterday, history books said nothing about any such rule. The library steps were crowded with school kids on a field trip. Rows of black students filing in first, laughing and shoving each other, the few white kids trailing behind, under a teacher's watchful eye, as if they're afraid to be too loud. Inside, the main hall smelled the same, paper, polish, and dust, but the murals above the checkout desk had changed. Where there had once been portraits of the Founding Fathers, now loomed giant paintings of black leaders in military coats, captions reading, "Founders of the New Order, 1900 Uprising." Darius headed for the history aisle. The shelves looked rearranged. Spines of thick volumes carried titles he didn't recognize. The Century of Black Rule, Southern Reversal, White Flight and Forced Labor Acts, Jim Gold Laws and the Making of the North. He yanked one open, pages crackling, and skimmed a chapter describing how after a 1900 rebellion led by General Ezekiel Carter, the U.S. flipped its racial hierarchy completely. His pulse pounded in his ears. It read like fiction, but the tone was dry textbook. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, is that book saying what I think it's saying?" A young white woman, probably college age, stood a few feet away, clutching a notebook to her chest. Darius closed the book halfway. "Depends what you think it's saying," he replied, keeping his voice low. "That all this been like this for over a century." Her tone hovered between disbelief and a plea for confirmation. He gave a slow shrug. "Yeah, that's what it's trying to tell us. But yesterday, I swear history didn't read like that." Her brows pinched together. "You remember it different too?" Darius nodded once, a spark of relief flickering in his chest. Finally, somebody else felt the same fracture in reality. Before they could speak further, a librarian cleared her throat behind the desk. A stern black woman in horn-rimmed glasses, pointing to a sign that read, "Whites, study tables in basement." The young white woman whispered, "I guess I better go," and slipped downstairs, clutching her notebook. Darius returned the book to the shelf, but snapped a picture of one key page with his phone, a map showing reverse segregation lines across D.C. boroughs. His thumb trembled as he saved the image. At least he had proof his dream was rewriting history itself. Leaving the library, he caught his reflection in the glass doors. Same hoodie, same eyes, yet he felt older, like he'd been carrying somebody else's memories all morning. Hunger growled in his stomach. He ducked into a diner he used to visit after late shifts. Inside, the booth by the window was empty, except for a sign taped to the glass. Black-only window seats. A white cook behind the counter avoided eye contact as he wiped down the grill. The waitress, a tall black woman with gold hoops, approached with a polite but firm smile. "Sit anywhere with the dark cushions, light cushions reserved." Darius slid into a corner booth with the darker vinyl and ordered eggs and toast. While he ate, the TV above the counter played muted footage of protests. White residents in the suburbs holding signs. "End the curfew, we bleed too." Police lines of black officers blocked them, shields gleaming under streetlights. He watched in silence, fork hovering midair, wondering how far this world's history went, how many centuries of pain had simply switched costumes overnight. His phone buzzed, another text from Cousin Marlon. "We hooping at the shop tonight, pull up, bruh." Darius pocketed the phone without answering. Something told him he needed to keep digging before small talk.
On his walk back to the bus stop, he passed the city courthouse. Broad stone steps where a new bronze plaque gleamed. Black Supremacy Justice Hall, built on the promise of reverse chains. A pair of young white men in work boots was scrubbing graffiti off the bottom step under the watch of a black deputy leaning on his baton, scrolling his phone unconcerned. The sight dug at Darius's conscience again. Revenge looked different up close, messy and bitter. He found himself whispering a prayer under his breath without even meaning to. Lord, what's the lesson here? The wind shifted cold off the Potomac as he boarded the bus home, sitting near the front, staring out the window at the flip murals rolling past, history's shadows drawn in reverse.
By noon, the sky over D.C. had turned that dull pewter that makes the city feel older than it is. Darius stood across from the courthouse, palms tucked in his hoodie, watching people drift up the steps like they were walking into a furnace they couldn't see. He hadn't planned to come back here, but the plaque from yesterday, built on the promise of reverse chains, kept burning in his head, and the memory of the white woman at the checkpoint, clutching her kids like life jackets, wouldn't quit either. The marble facade looked the same as always, except for the doorway signs. Black entrance, main hall. Whites, service door around back. He watched a small line of white folks snake toward the side alley under the eye of a black deputy twirling the baton. On the front steps, a black bailiff barked roll call, directing attorneys and plaintiffs through metal detectors that hummed like hungry bees. Darius took a breath and headed up the main steps. Inside, the lobby bustled, black attorneys in sharp suits, gold badges catching the fluorescent light, white defendants clutching manila envelopes, avoiding eye contact. A drinking fountain pair sat in the corner, one gleaming with a placard, "Black Only," the other old and calcified under a taped sign, "Whites, boil water before use." He felt heat rise in his chest. He wasn't naive about history, but up close the flip tasted like metal. He scanned the docket monitor glowing blue. Curfew violations, room 4C. Something pulled him that way, instinct or guilt he couldn't tell. Room 4C was standing room only. A black female judge sat elevated behind a seal embossed with a gold crown. A black prosecutor clicked a pen, expression flat as stone. On the defense table, a white public defender stacked files to the edge like sandbags before a flood.
Next case,
The judge said, voice firm but not cruel. Docket 6221, curfew breach. Defendant, Harper, Claire. Darius's head lifted. The white woman from the bridge, the grocery tote, stepped forward, hands trembling just enough to see from where he stood. Her two kids sat on the back bench with a white volunteer, skinny legs kicking the wood as they tried to be brave.
Your Honor.
She started, voice thin. I was trying to get home before the sirens, the checkpoint line.
Facts, Miss Harper. You were recorded at 7:13 p.m. Curfew is 7 o'clock. That's breach.
The prosecutor raised a palm. The public defender stood, throat clearing. We're asking for leniency. Traffic backlog at State Avenue. She's a single mother with 2 minors, no priors.
The statute doesn't carve exceptions for single mother or oops, my clock ran slow, counselor. The prosecutor kept his tone even, almost bored. Curfew exists to keep order. Order keeps peace. That's the chain.
Darius shifted on his feet, feeling the room's temperature change, not the air, the mood. He flashed on memories of his Aunt Lenore pleading with a judge 20 years ago over a parking ticket that ballooned into a warrant. Faces were different now. The choreography was the same. The judge glanced at the screen. There's also an unpaid administrative fee for a prior ID verification delay.
I paid that last week. They wouldn't take my card at the window. I came back with cash. Miss Harper, this court can't fix the finance window. We adjudicate violations. She paused. Were your children with you after 7? Yes, ma'am. I couldn't leave them home alone. Then it's aggravated. Minors present during curfew breach. The prosecutor set his pen down like a gavel. Recommend fine, compliance seminar, and 30 days community supervision with workplace checks.
The words hit like cold water. Community supervision sounded polite. Folks on the block called it what it was, a leash. Darius felt his throat tighten. Without planning it, he lifted a hand.
Yes?
The judge's eyebrow ticked. I heard his voice before he understood what he was doing. I was at that checkpoint yesterday. Lines wrapped the block. I saw this woman there. She was trying to make it through.
To finish yourself for the record.
The prosecutor didn't bother to hide a sigh. Darius Walker, resident Ward 7, no stake in the case except telling the truth.
Mr. Walker, truth is lovely, but the footage already shows the time. Her effort doesn't erase the clock.
The judge rested a chin on one hand, considering. Mr. Walker, did you observe any officer-related delay? He chose his words carefully. I saw officers doing full bag checks on every white car. Some got waved through faster, some didn't. Felt uneven. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The bailiff's look told everyone to keep it down. The judge exhaled. This court acknowledges systemic irregularities exist. We don't remedy them here. Her eyes flicked to Claire's kids. But context informs consequence. Silence stretched like a tripwire. Finally, she spoke. Fine reduced by half. Seminar mandatory. Supervision suspended unless there's another breach in 60 days. Next case. Claire's shoulders sagged in relief so sudden it almost toppled her. The public defender squeezed her arm, whispering fast. Darius felt the room breathe again. He backed out, heartbeat loud in his ears. In the hallway, footsteps caught up behind him.
Hey.
Claire's voice, hoarse but grateful.
Thank you. I don't know what made you speak, but thank you.
Darius shook his head. Don't thank me. Just get home safe. Keep your head low till some of this cools down. Her two kids peered around the legs at him, one of them half smiling, the other chewing his sleeve like it might bite back. The moment fractured when a uniformed officer stepped between them, tall, fit, uniform crisp, gold piping sharp enough to cut. His badge read, T. Conley. Mr. Walker, the officer said, voice neutral in a way that wasn't. Word? Darius' gut nodded. He followed a few steps aside under a framed portrait of a black general no book in his old life had ever taught him. You a witness on everything you see now, or just the parts that make you feel noble? He didn't wait for an answer. Careful where you put your voice. Crowds start thinking out loud. System starts listening. Darius held the officer's eyes. System should listen. Conley smiled without humor. It does, to itself. He leaned in a breath. Stay blessed, Mr. Walker. The officer's footsteps faded down the hall, leaving something sour in the air like burnt sugar. Darius turned back. Claire and her kids were already at the stairwell, hustling for the back exit, marked Whites Only, Service Way. Outside, the gray sky had sunk lower, brushing the courthouse cornices. On the top step, a group of black activists held clipboards canvassing for donations to expand community supervision zones. A white custodian was buffing the marble beside him, earbuds in, eyes on the floor. Darius stood at the bottom step and stared up at the plaque again. He imagined flipping it like a coin. Reverse change, reverse pain. How many more hearings would it take before somebody admitted that swapping boots didn't fix what boots did? His phone buzzed. Marlon, Hoop at 7, you ghosting? He typed back, maybe later. Deleted it, typed, I'm good, another day. He walked to the side alley, where two fountains sat against brick, one polished with a fresh, black-only placket, the other dripping rust on the concrete. A white man in a mechanic's shirt hesitated at the rusty one, then pulled a collapsible cup from his pocket and filled it anyway.
His hands didn't shake. They just moved slow, like he learned the rhythm of humiliation and found a way to survive it without breaking. My chest tightened. I wasn't a savior. I wasn't a judge. I was one man standing between a memory of yesterday and a rule book from nowhere. Far off, a siren wailed, not urgent, just routine. I pictured Claire trying to beat it home, her kids buckled in, eyes on the dash clock like it was a detonator. A drizzle started, dotting the marble into darker constellations. He pulled up his hood and took the long way home, head down, thinking about boots and coins and which side of the story teaches anyone how to stand without stepping on somebody else's neck. As he crossed the avenue, a city bus hissed to a stop. The front doors folded open for black riders, rear doors for white. He caught his reflection in the glass and tired eyes, unsteady jaw, and for a half second the glass flickered. Not a trick of light, a true flicker, like static skipping on an old TV. He blinked and the world steadied. The bus chugged off. A billboard high above showed a smiling black family with the caption, "Security is justice. Justice is security." The smile looked too white in the gray rain. Darius walked faster, rain needling his cheeks. Somewhere, a preacher's voice boomed from a radio. Words he couldn't make out, melody he could. Get right, stay right, be right. He knew right wasn't a place you stood.
The first thing Darius noticed that morning was the bathroom mirror. While brushing his teeth, he saw it flicker, just a thin static ripple across the glass, like an old TV about to lose signal. Then it cleared, leaving his own face staring back, toothbrush midair, foam dripping onto the sink. He wiped the glass with a towel, leaned close. Nothing wrong, no crack, no dust. Before a heartbeat, he swore he'd glimpsed something behind his reflection, a flash of the old world, the one he remembered. Miss Louise's knock pulled him out of it. She called through the door about a neighborhood meeting at the rec center tonight. Safety update, she said. Darius mumbled he'd try to make it. Over breakfast, he scrolled his phone. Headlines scrolled like punchlines gone sour. Black state expands curfew patrols to inner-ring suburbs. White majority PTA group disbanded for unauthorized assembly. Unity parade breaks record attendance. A push alert popped from his cousin Marlon. "Yo, you ghosted again. Ball tonight at 7. Darius ignored it. His thoughts were already on the static in the mirror and the way Officer Conley had warned him yesterday. Crowds start thinking out loud, system starts listening. He grabbed his jacket and decided to visit the barbershop, not just for a shape-up, but for the street chatter that always lived between clippers and mirrors. The shop bell jingled as he stepped inside. Same smell of disinfectant and talc, same wall of faded go-go posters. But even here, the vibe felt split. Black customers laughing over weekend games up front, a single white man sitting near the door pretending to read a magazine that was upside down. Marlon was at his usual chair, cape around his neck, grinning at Darius in the mirror. He said, "Thought you fell off the map, cuz." Darius answered, "Been busy trying to make sense of this city. You notice anything feel off lately?" Marlon chuckled. "Off? Like them wizard stats? Everything else same as it's been, bro." The barber, an older man with silver at his temples, raised an eyebrow in the mirror, but said nothing. As Clippers buzzed, he watched the wall-mounted TV. News footage showed a late-night protest on the bridge. White families holding candles, surrounded by riot-shielded black officers. Lower third caption, "Unauthorized vigil dispersed without incident." The white man's eyes met Darius's in the mirror, and Darius caught that same hunted look he'd seen at the checkpoint. The man cleared his throat. He said, "They say we can't light candles past 9 now. Fire hazard rule, always some new rule." The barber shot the man a warning glance and changed the channel to sports highlights. Conversation shifted back to basketball scores, laughter easy, but a little too loud, like static turned up to drown out what nobody wanted to hear. When Darius paid and left,
The morning sun had climbed high enough to bake the sidewalk. Across the street, a billboard crew was pasting a fresh poster over an old soda ad. Black Future Conference, Power is Our Legacy. The white delivery driver parked nearby watched them silently, jaw set. Darius headed toward the rec center early, hoping to scope the place before the meeting crowd. The rec center's mural had changed, too. Gone were the bright playground scenes. Now a massive black and gold emblem of a raised fist covered half the brick wall. Inside the lobby, kids' drawings lined the corkboard. Most were normal, basketballs, pets, superheroes, but one caught his eye, a crayon sketch of a bus with the words "Black Front, White Back" scrawled above stick figure passengers. The kid's signature at the bottom made his stomach knot. The lesson was sinking into new generations like wet concrete. "Miss Walker?" A soft voice pulled him back. The rec center coordinator, a tall black woman in a burgundy sweater, approached with a clipboard. "We're reviewing new safety protocols, curfew zones expanding again." Darius nodded, signed the sheet, then drifted toward the auditorium doors. Rows of metal chairs waited under humming fluorescents. He sat near the back, phone in hand, scrolling the photos he'd snapped at the library, that map of reverse segregation lines glowing on the screen like a secret blueprint. A tap on his shoulder made him jump. It was Claire, the woman from the hearing, still looking worn but standing straighter today. She said, "Didn't expect to see you here. They told us attendance is mandatory for all supervised families. Guess you came voluntary?" Darius replied, "Something like that. Figured I should hear what rules they're adding before I trip over one." She smiled faintly, the first one he'd seen from her. "Thanks again at the courthouse. Kid's been sleeping better since that night." Before Darius could respond, the microphone at the podium squealed and a hush rippled through the growing crowd. Officer Conley stepped up to the mic, posture sharp in his black and gold uniform. "Evening, neighbors. Updates on new safety grid. As of Friday, perimeter curfew for white residents moves to 6 p.m. on weekdays. Checkpoints increase on all bridges. Compliance seminars doubled." Murmurs rose, some approving nods from the front rows, a few tense shifts in the back. Claire's hands clenched in her lap. Darius noticed her knuckles whitening, but her face stayed still. Kindly continued, voice steady as stone. "Enforcement remains zero tolerance for breaches. We appreciate community cooperation to keep order intact." As he spoke, the overhead lights flickered, just a tiny blink, barely a second, but enough to make Darius glance up. Nobody else seemed to notice. The rest of the meeting rolled through charts and maps projected on a white screen, red circles marking restricted corridors, yellow zones for mandatory work permits. Darius jotted nothing down. The images were burned in already. When the meeting adjourned, chairs scraped metal on tile as people filed out under the buzz of the fluorescents. Claire lingered by the door, kids tugging at her sleeves. She said, "Mr. Walker, if you ever figure out why you remember things different, let me know. It feels like I'm going crazy some days." Darius hesitated, then nodded. "You're not crazy. Something's off. I'll keep digging." Outside, dusk had fallen hard, sky a bruised purple over the rooftops. Street lamps blinked on in a ripple, casting gold halos on damp pavement. The new curfew siren let out its hollow wail, echoing between buildings like a giant warning note. Claire hurried the kids toward their car. Darius watched until they pulled away, taillights glowing red in the drizzle. Alone on the rec center steps, he caught his reflection in the dark glass door, and again, for a fraction of a heartbeat, the static shimmered. Behind his reflection, the mural of the raised fist seemed to glitch, flashing to the old playground scene, then back. He blinked hard, heart thudding.
The storm that rolled in overnight left the streets washed clean, but it couldn't rinse off the unease sitting on Darius's chest. He woke before sunrise to the low drone of patrol SUVs circling the neighborhood like sharks in dark water. The static in the mirror hadn't shown up this morning, but the memory of it clung like cold sweat. He couldn't shake the sense that cracks were showing, not in the glass, but in the world itself. Miss Louise was out early, sweeping her stoop, humming an old gospel under her breath. She waved a broom toward the lamppost where a fresh lotus flapped damp against the pole. White districts subject to early pass inspections. 5 p.m. deadline. He nodded back, but kept moving, hoodie up, deciding to head toward the old metro tunnels near the river. Back before the flip, he'd heard stories about underground graffiti crews that hid messages from cops. Maybe somebody down there still painted truths that hadn't been rewritten. The tunnel entrance was chained, but the fence beside it sagged from years of rain. He slipped through, flashlight app glowing weak in the damp air. Dropped water dripped in the skull metronome somewhere deep inside. Faded tags coated the walls, old school names from decades back, mostly covered by fresh black and gold stencils. Order is justice. Then he spotted something half-scrubbed near a rusted stairwell. Red spray paint lines spelling, "Wake up, this ain't real." His pulse jumped. He ran fingers over the letters. Paint was barely a day old. A sound echoed, footsteps splashing shallow puddles. He spun, phone lights slicing the shadows. "Relax, I'm not here to rob you." A white man in a gray maintenance jacket stepped from behind a pillar, hands raised halfway. "Saw your light from down the stair, figured you weren't patrol." Darius lowered the phone slightly but didn't pocket it. He asked him, "You write this?" He tilted the beam toward the red message. "No, but I know who did. Folks who remember another history. We meet sometimes, where cameras don't reach." "You remember it too?" Darius asked, voice dropping. "Bits and pieces, like dreams you can't shake. Statues were different, laws were flipped. People call us crazy, but I see it in your face. You've seen cracks too." Darius nodded once. The man introduced himself as Evan, used to be an IT tech before new permit laws cut him out of his job. "We're trying to trace the signal," Evan added, pointing up at the tunnel ceiling where a tangle of old cables sagged. "Something's broadcasting citywide at low frequency, messes with power grids and, I swear, with memory. We pick up bursts of static when we run scanners." The word static made his skin prickle. He told Evan about the mirror, about the flickers during the meeting at the rec center. Evan listened like a man finally hearing proof of his own suspicions. They exchanged burner numbers scribbled on the gum wrapper, no digital trail, then split ways before patrol made a round. Back on the surface, daylight felt harsher. A checkpoint SUV idled at the end of the block, officers sipping coffee through the cracked window while scanning the sidewalks. Darius decided to stop at the diner near the courthouse for lunch, stomach tight with questions. The diner TV was tuned to midday news, footage of new surveillance towers being installed across bridge routes. Anchor's voice boomed under the caption, "Curfew compliance improves, incidents down 14%. Claire appeared at the counter ordering grilled cheese for her kids. She slid into the opposite booth, lowering her voice. "They just searched my trunk at noon," she said, shaking her head. "Said they're testing random daytime stops now." Darius told her in fragments about the tunnel and the message on the wall. Her eyes widened, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she whispered, "My kids, they sometimes say they dreamed about different classrooms, with everyone sitting wherever they wanted. I thought it was just cartoons getting in their heads." A shiver rolled down his spine. He leaned closer, voice low. "You're not alone. Something's bleeding through." Before they could speak further, 2 black officers entered for coffee. The conversation in the diner dropped to a hush. Claire focused on her sandwich order, Darius on his fries. When they left, the tension eased, but the questions lingered. That evening, Darius returned home, pulled the blinds shut tight, and opened his phone's voice memo app to record everything he'd seen since the first flip morning. Names, places, dates. If the world tried to rewrite itself again, at least he'd have his own record. As he spoke into the mic, the bathroom light behind him flickered once, just enough to catch in the corner of the mirror. He turned. Nothing there, only his reflection, watching back with eyes that no longer trusted what they saw. He ended the recording with a whisper. Lord, if this is your test, give me eyes steady enough to see the truth. Outside, the evening siren moaned through the streets like an old horn across water. The city slipped back under curfew while he sat on the couch, listening to static hiss faintly from the speaker of a muted TV.
The city felt wide tight that night, like somebody had pulled the strings through every street light and was plucking them with a cold finger. Darius stood in the shadow of a 10-story parking garage off South Capitol, watching crews bolt the new black and gold mast into the roofline 2 blocks away. The thing looked like a church spire crossed with a cell tower, sleek, predatory, humming just below hearing. Evan had texted a single word at dusk, up. Then a pen dropped on the map and the message auto-deleted. Darius came on foot, hood low, moving like rain that didn't want to be noticed. The garage stairwell reeked of bleach and old smoke. His sneakers whispered over concrete as he climbed. On the 4th landing, a metal sign was bolted crooked on the wall. Black-only elevator, with a smaller arrow beneath it, painted by hand. Whites used stairs. He paused, feeling the familiar twist in his gut. Old poison poured into a new bottle. The roof door was chained, but somebody had popped the hinge pin. It opened with a soft sigh. Night air rushed his face, wet, electric. Beyond the parapet, the tower rose above the next building, lights winking like a heartbeat. You made it, Evan said from the shadows, breath fogging. He wore the same gray maintenance jacket, a small handheld scanner cradled like a bird. They're testing it. I'm getting spikes every 30 seconds, bursts layered on the power grid. Darius leaned over the parapet. On the opposite roof, 2 black techs in black and gold windbreakers fed thick cables into a cabinet while an uniformed officer oversaw with a tablet. The hum deepened, more felt than heard, the way bass hits your ribs in a club. Watch, Evan whispered. He tapped the scanner. When the bar peaks, you'll get the, static. Darius stared. The tower lights pulsed. 1, 2, 3. Then the scanner chirped. For an instant, the skyline jittered, a thin ripple skimming the air. His stomach flipped. The black entrance plaque on the courthouse facade 3 blocks away flickered to a blank square and snapped back. He rubbed his eyes. So it ain't just me, he murmured. That thing's pushing it. Not just pushing, sinking, like it's telling the city what to remember. The roof access behind them creaked. Darius spun, ready to bolt, then relaxed ahead when he saw Claire step out, shoulders hunched under a thrift store coat. She kept her head down the way people do when they're used to apologizing to air. I followed the pen too, she whispered. The babysitter's with the kids. I couldn't sit home with that hum in my teeth. Darius's first instinct was to send her back. This was heat. But then the tower pulsed again. Claire winced like it touched a nerve only she could feel. My daughter keeps waking up, asking why the bus won't let her sit by the window. Yesterday she didn't know that rule. Today she does. She said she remembers now, but she shouldn't. The scanner chirped, another spike. Down below, the uniformed officer looked up and swept the surrounding rooftops with a small spotlight. It lingered on our garage for a breath, then moved on. Darius swallowed. We need to get closer, he said. Not to start a war, just to see. Evan nodded, clipped the safety line to a vent pipe, and passed the other end to Darius. Just in case we got to cross the catwalk, he pointed at a narrow service bridge strung between our garage and the tower building like a thread over an alley. Wind nosed up from the alley, cold, metallic. They moved low, step by step. From here he could see the cabinet door stencil, Unity grid node, property of Metro Authority. The officer's tablet threw pale squares of light across his jaw. His badge caught the glow. T. Conley. Darius froze. Of course it was him. Hold the cycle, Conley told the text, voice calm, certain. Let the grid breathe 10 seconds, then double amplitude for 30. Double amplitude. Even the words felt like a weight pressing on the city's chest. Claire touched Darius's sleeve, whispering, "If he sees us." "He won't," Evans said, though his eyes didn't match his voice. "Just don't look like you're seeing something." The tower's lights sank, paused, then surged. The scanner screamed high in Evans' hand. Darius's teeth ached like aluminum foil on a filling. For a heartbeat, the alley, the tower, even Conley's face pixelated and snapped back. A memory slammed his head so hard he staggered. His dad on a summer bus in '99, laughing with a white coworker about a game, nobody counting seats, the driver waving kids to sit wherever there was space. It was simple, unremarkable, yet it didn't fit the new rule book at all. He grabbed the parapet and breathed until the rooftop steadied. "I saw my daughter's classroom different," she whispered fast, eyes shining. Color charts, not lines. A boy with freckles sharing markers with a black girl. She smiled back. "I swear I remember it." Conley looked up as if he'd heard her through the wind. His spotlight raked the garage again, slower this time. Darius pulled Claire down behind the HVAC unit. Evan pressed flat to the tar, breath held. The light slid past and kept moving. Conley tapped his tablet. "Resume standard amplitude. Lock schedule for dawn cycles. If it jitters, we escalate." The text nodded, closing the cabinet with a heavy click. The hum softened to a steady purr, like a lullaby for a city that didn't need sleep so much as obedience. When the crew finally filed toward the interior stairs, Darius risked a peek. Conley lingered alone by the rail, staring out over the neighborhoods east of the river like a man measuring the size of his shadow. "I know you're there, Mr. Walker," Conley said quietly, without turning. His voice carried just enough to reach them. "You carry that look, the one people get when they think a mirror owes them the truth." Darius's muscles locked. Claire's fingers closed around his sleeve. Evan shook his head. "Don't move." "This city used to sing another song," Conley went on, almost gentle. "It didn't heal nobody, it just let folks lie pretty. We tuned it. Now it holds a key." He tapped the rail. Keys cut doors and cages. For a second, Darius thought Conley might turn, might walk the span between rooftops and drag them into the light. Instead, the officer pocketed his tablet and disappeared down the stairwell hatch, boots ringing metal like a metronome. They didn't speak for a long half-minute. Only the tower breathed. Evan broke first. "We need proof someone else will accept. Readings, video, a cycle map. If we can match memory spikes to tower pulses, then we show it ain't natural," Darius finished. "And then what? Petition the same court that blessed this plaque?" He nodded toward the courthouse dome peeking between roofs. Claire's voice was steady when she answered. "Then we show people, all kinds of people, moms, kids, barbers, librarians. You can override a person's timeline in a book. It's harder to override a face you just looked in the eyes." The plan formed itself while she spoke. Not a revolution, not yet, but a leak. Darius would film pulses from different blocks. Evan would log the scanner spikes. Claire would collect stories that changed overnight. They post without names, then with first names, then with faces when someone got brave enough. "Start small," Evan said. "Tonight, 2 cycles. Dawn, 3 more. We triangulate." Darius glanced once more at the tower. The wind had shifted, carrying the faint smell of hot metal and rain. It reminded him of summer storms when he was a kid, how the air felt different a second before lightning. Maybe this was that second. They crawled back across the catwalk, slipped through the roof door, and padded down the stairwell past the crooked sign, "Black-only elevator." On the second landing, boots thudded somewhere below, security making rounds. They ducked into a service closet until the echoes passed, breath counting heartbeats. Street level, the city looked unchanged. Patrol SUVs rolling slow, bus front doors for black riders, rear doors for white. A poster on the bus shelter glass reading, "Whites carry work permits at all times." Ordinary, like the rules had always been there, because the song told you they were. Claire peeled off toward the metro, head down. Evan vanished into a narrow alley shortcut. Darius took the long way home, phone angled to catch the tower in 3 15-second clips from different corners. Every time it posted, he whispered the second in the street into his mic. The sky cleared to a brittle midnight. He reached his building and stood for a moment under Miss Louise's window box, the soil dark and shining from an earlier rain. Upstairs, his bathroom light flicked on by itself. Maybe his timer, maybe not. He stepped inside and faced the mirror. For a breath, it showed only him, worn hoodie, eyes that had seen too much tonight. Then a thin ripple scrolled up the glass like a breeze under a curtain. The raised fist mural behind his shoulder flickered to a chalk drawing of kids sharing a seesaw, then snapped back to the fist. He didn't look away. He set his phone on the sink, hit record, and spoke into the rippling glass like it could carry his words somewhere the tower couldn't touch. My name is Darius Walker of Ward 7. If you hear me different tomorrow than you hear me tonight, know this. I saw the men who tuned the city's key. I heard the song they're forcing us to sing. I won't pretend it's the only song I know. The mirror steadied. The hum outside fell to a purr. He killed the light and let the room go dark, heart finally slowing to something he could carry.
Dawn came thin and colorless, like the city hadn't made up its mind to wake. Darius sat on the edge of his couch with his phone balanced on his knee, thumb hovering over the upload arrow. 3 clips of the tower's pulses, time-stamped from different corners. Evan's scanner audio stitched under them like a heartbeat. He titled the file plain as a bruise. Unity grid node, memory pulses. His stomach rolled. Not fear of posting, fear of the world going quiet around him, pretending it didn't see. He thought of Claire's kid asking about the bus window, of the mirror ripple, of Conley on the roof saying the city used to sing another song. He hit upload. The spinner turned. Then the post sat there, small and dangerous. He added a caption. If your memories don't fit the script, watch this with the sound on. Timestamps match light pulses. Tell me what you remember. Down on Minnesota Avenue, storefronts yawned open. The Go-Go Mart door chimed. The bus hissed at the corner, and the world resumed the performance it had rehearsed all week. Miss Louise's knock came softer than usual. You eat yet? She called. Got fresh muffins. Don't argue, baby. He let her in. She set a warm paper sack on his counter and glanced at the phone on the table, screen still glowing with the post. You stirring pots before breakfast? I'm just asking questions, he said carefully. She studied his face a long second. Questions are fine. Answers are where the trouble starts. He almost told her about the tower, about the scanner, about the mirror. Instead, he nodded and took a muffin he didn't taste. When she left, his phone buzzed. A comment, then 3, then a dozen. Most were quiet at first. An eye emoji, a single question mark, or yo, my lights flicker too. Then a long one from a white dad in Ward 3 describing how his son suddenly remembered being assigned the back row in class. A black librarian from downtown wrote that she'd had headaches every night the tower blinked, like a pressure change inside her skull. Darius breathed out. It wasn't just him, or Claire, or Evan in the tunnels. His cousin Marlon texted a link. No words, just the link to Darius's own post, bounced back through the barber chat with a string of side eyes. Then, bruh, you good? Then, call me. He pocketed the phone and stepped into the hall. If the city was going to sing about him, he wanted to hear the tune straight out the shop speakers. The morning crowd at the barbershop was thicker than usual. Clip was buzzed, sports highlights rolled, but conversation kept swerving back to the same thing. A tower on South Capitol. Some fool had put up a hum nobody wanted to admit they heard until someone else said it first. Marlon met him at the door with a look that held both pride and worry. You trying to go viral or trying to get vanished? Darius kept his voice level. Truth ain't viral or quiet, cuz. It's just true. You seen the light cycle? The older barber, with the silver temples, flicked his eyes toward the TV, then back to Darius. I seen lightning with no storm.
Back in the day, we used to say if it don't make sense, it's a policy. Now I say if it don't make sense, it's a setting. Laughter cracked the tension, then died fast when the door chimed and two uniforms stepped in, black and gold pressed sharp enough to slice the air. Officer Conley stood behind them, not smiling. "Morning," Conley said. "City compliance check. Just here for trims and truth." Nobody laughed. Conley's gaze found Darius like it had been magnetized overnight. "Mr. Walker," he said, almost gently, "you got a busy feed today." Darius kept his hands at his sides. "Just asking folks what they remember." Memories are a luxury in a city that's learning to heal. Too much past, people get stuck. Too much future, people get lost. We keep them in the melody. He wanted to ask who that we was, but he already knew. The hum in his teeth answered for him. The uniforms bought bottled water, left cash crisp on the counter, and walked out without citing anything. Conley lingered a breath longer, eyes never leaving Darius. "Careful you don't tune yourself out the choir," he said softly. "Too much noise, and the conductor raises his hand." When they were gone, the room exhaled hard. Marla's jaw flexed. "You ain't just poking the bear, you tapping the glass on the tank." Darius squeezed his cousin's shoulder. "Then don't swim toward the tapping," he said, forcing a half grin he didn't feel. Back on the street, his posts kept multiplying, stitched, duetted, shared to neighborhood chats and church threads, to white parent forums and black small business groups. Faces started appearing on camera, tired nurses, a bus driver, a construction foreman, all saying some version of the same sentence. "It wasn't like this yesterday." Claire texted a clip of her daughter's drawing, two kids on a bus seat, one brown, one peach, the window between them colored bright blue. The caption in a child's hand, "We can both sit by the window." That one hit different. He pinned it to the top of the thread. By noon, the city answered back. A press bulletin from the Metro Authority slid into feeds. Unity grid nodes ensure stability and reduce panic-fueled rumor cycles. Reports of memory pulses are misinformation intended to sow division. The bulletin carried a watermark of the same black and gold crown that topped the courthouse seal. Comments he didn't recognize flooded his post now. Ghost accounts calling him a liar, a traitor, a plant. He watched the ratio shift, then steady, then tilt again as real profiles kept talking about headaches, light flickers, dream-like flashbacks of a different bus or a different rule. Evan pinged a burner text. "Scanner shows they're dampening. Shorter bursts, faster cycle. Meet 3 p.m. library steps, backside." Darius pulled his hood and moved. The library's rear steps sat in permanent shadow, a strip of cool stone even on hot days. Today, it felt colder. Evan arrived first, eyes rimmed red like sleep had been rationed. Claire hustled up a moment later, hair tucked under a knit cap, kid drawings peeking from her tote. Evan handed Darius a printout, jagged lines climbing and falling. "They adjusted amplitude after your post," he said. "See these micro spikes? Like they're tapping people on the shoulder instead of slapping." Claire unrolled a poster board. "I've got 12 stories from the parent group, half black, half white. Most remember both ways now, like double exposure." Darius looked from the graphs to the drawings to the stone steps where a brass plaque read, "White's Basement Entrance." A group of white teens filed into the side door under the plaque. A black guard scanned their permits with a bored wand. On the other side of the landing, two black college kids laughed over a phone, sunlight bright on their faces. Two worlds, one staircase. "What next?" Claire asked. "We go bigger without going dumb. No slogans, no threats. We show. We don't scream. We ask people to look in their mirrors and tell the truth out loud." Evan nodded. "Tonight, we ride the line, tower to bridge to courthouse. If the grid pushes, we catch the push." A shadow fell across the steps. Officer Conley again, like he grew from the stone. He wasn't alone this time. 2 techs and windbreakers hovered behind him, holding a black case with foam cutouts. "Afternoon," Conley said. "Appreciate civic engagement. Few questions." Darius felt Claire stiffen beside him. Evan slid the scanner into his jacket as if he was just folding his arms against the cold. "We've had reports," Conley continued, "of unauthorized use of spectrum analysis devices near critical infrastructure. That's a mouthful for folks poking at wires they shouldn't." His tone stayed polite. His eyes did not. Evan met his gaze. "Public rooftops aren't critical infrastructure unless you made them that way." "Everything's infrastructure when it holds a city together," Conley said softly. "Even lies. They keep people from panicking long enough to get through a day." Darius stepped forward. "Truth keeps people from being stuck in a day forever." Conley studied him for a beat that might split open. "Mr. Walker, you keep saying things like a man who wants a better song. Careful you don't blow the speakers." He gestured. One tech cracked the black case, revealing 3 small discs like coasters lined with copper. The tech palmed one and stuck it under the handrail where the stone met the metal. Evan's jacket pocket buzzed faintly. He flinched. "Signal dampers," Conley said, as if giving a museum tour. "Calm the edges. People sleep. Kids go to school. Streets don't burn." Claire lifted her chin. "Kids also learn where they're allowed to sit by a window." Conley's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite regret. "Windows face 2 directions. Sometimes you close the blind on one so the other side can read." He tapped his tablet, then looked back at Darius, not in kind. "Go home, eat your muffins, let the post run its course. The city will forget where it needs to." They watched him and the text drift off like a tide pulling back from the steps.
The October night came in heavy and wet, clouds pressing low over the Anacostia like a lid on a boiling pot. Darius zipped his hoodie to his chin and felt the vibration of the bridge under his shoes, cars rolling slow as if the road itself was bracing. He reached the east end of the 11th Street Bridge just as the first curfew siren wound down into the river mist. Patrol SUVs angled nose out on the shoulder, their gold-crowned decals glowing in the drizzle. Orange barricades blocked the outer lane. On each side of the barricade, a small copper disc pulsed like a sleeping heartbeat, the same dampers they'd seen at the library. Claire was already there with her kids buckled in the back seat of her silver sedan parked 2 blocks away. She stood at the rail clutching a tote of drawings under her arm. Evan crouched near a storm drain, his handheld scanner sweeping side to side in slow arcs. The green bars on the tiny screen climbed every time the tower's distant light winked. Darius's phone was mounted on a clip to the bridge rail, lens aimed at the skyline where the Unity Grid tower blinked faint blue through the mist. The live stream counter in the corner ticked upward, a couple hundred, then 1,000, then more. The storm that followed the bridge standoff rolled in hard after midnight, drenching the whole city till the streets shimmered like dark glass. Darius couldn't sleep. He paced the apartment, checked the saved live stream file twice, listened to the rain drumming the seal like he was trying to speak in code. At 3 a.m., he found himself standing in the bathroom again, phone flashlight off, just him in the mirror. The glass stayed calm for a long minute. Then the ripple crawled up its center slow as a heartbeat. "You gonna show me the truth or keep teasing me?" he whispered at his own reflection. The ripple spread wide till his whole face shimmered, and suddenly the image behind him shifted. The black and gold mural on his wall blurred into a chalk drawing of kids on a seesaw. The copper discs on the bridge blinked like tiny buoys floating on water. Claire's daughter's blue bus window glowed in the dark like stained glass. All of it layered over itself like the world was made of 2 transparencies fighting to fit. He reached out, fingertip touched cold glass, and fell forward into darkness.
When he opened his eyes, he was lying on wet pavement at the foot of the 11th Street Bridge. But the barricades were gone. The copper discs were gone. The Unity Grid Tower was just an ordinary sail mast blinking red for airplanes. The sky over the river held no pulse, only the dull silver of a clearing storm. Claire's sedan pulled up beside the curb like she'd just driven from a PTA meeting, no toted drawings in sight. She rolled down the window, brows knit in confusion.
You okay? You look like you ran through the rain and lost your way.
Darius struggled up, heart racing. The barricades, the dampers, the whole thing.
What barricades? Bridge has been clear all year.
A bus rumbled past them. No signs about which door to use, no separation of rows. Black and white passengers scattered across seats, earbuds in, sharing the same exhausted commute home. His chest tightened as the reality shifted again.
Claire tilted her head. You sure you're all right?
He opened his mouth to answer, but his voice caught because walking across the bridge toward them was Officer Connolly in a plain gray raincoat, no badge, no tablet, carrying a paper coffee cup. When their eyes met, the officer gave a nod like two men recognizing each other from a story they both dreamed.
Long night, huh?
Storm had half the streetlights out. Darius stared at him, then at Claire, then back at the skyline, now free of its blue heartbeat. The memory of the tower's hum echoed in his bones, though the air was silent.
Yeah, long night.
Connolly tipped the cup in a friendly salute and kept walking into the mist. Claire drove him back to his apartment without questions. By the time he stepped inside, dawn had scraped a pale stripe of gold across the window blinds. Miss Louise's gospel hummed faint through the hallway as if nothing had ever changed. He set the phone on the counter. No live stream app, no scanner logs, just the weather widget blinking, storm watch ended. Every clip he'd saved of the posters was gone from storage, replaced by an error icon that read, "File not found." The muffin sack from yesterday still sat on the table, dry, ordinary. He laughed under his breath, a shaky sound that surprised even him. Darius walked to the mirror one last time. No ripple, no shimmer, just a man's tired reflection staring back. He leaned close and whispered, like leaving a note for whoever was watching. I get it now. The song don't have to own the singer. Then he bowed his head, palms pressed against the sink edge, and prayed out loud. Lord, I saw a world flipped on his head, and it felt like justice until I tasted how bitter it still was. Forgive the harm we do thinking we're fixing harm. Teach us to remember pain without trading seats in it. Show us how to build tables longer than the bridges we barricade. Help us keep our children's memories clean, not rewritten, not erased. Give us the courage to speak truth even when the city hums a louder lie. And if that was your warning in a dream, let me wake each day steady enough to do better in the real one. Amen. He let the word hang in the quiet apartment. Outside, rain clouds thinned to streaks of pale blue sky. Somewhere, a bus hissed to a stop, doors opening the same for everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching my story.